First, I just want to mention that I did this last time we had, my wife passed away suddenly. And I want to thank, I got lots of cards and flowers and everything, and my family really appreciates that, so we're doing okay. We'll go with a roll call first. Vice Chair Curtis.
Victoria Curtis, aye.
Councilmember Pavlik.
Here.
Councilmember Zhang. See her up there. Councilmember DeWitt.
Hi, Jinwei, I'm here. I'm sorry today my husband had something emergency last minute. I have to be at home with the kids. I can't leave them.
Okay, thank you, DeWitt. And Pam, see you. Councilmember Sapir.
Here.
Councilmember Ramirez.
Here.
Okay, so thank you all for coming tonight, and those of you on Zoom too. First, we've got minutes of the last 3 minutes.
Chair,
I'm sorry, yes.
I just wanted to check, because I know our caretaker resigned, and just wanted to see, is anybody taking minutes, or are we before we start, are we doing?
Yeah, so they'll be recorded and then, yeah, I'll use all the fancy.
Yeah.
Okay, great. Just wanted to make sure.
Ronnie's got AI.
Yeah.
For us.
Right, okay.
All right. So we've got 3 sets of minutes to approve. The first one is the September 18th minutes. I only noticed one thing in there on page 4 and 6. The spelling of our outgoing member, Stephanie, her last name is Dyer, not Nye. So those 2 corrections, I didn't see anything else on there. Anybody else have any? Okay, could we get a motion to approve?
Yeah, motion to approve.
And I second.
Yeah.
Okay, any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Aye.
Motion carries. Okay, the minutes of the October 16th meeting. Anybody have anything on that? If not, look for a motion. To approve.
Are those minutes available
Yes.
to the public?
Yeah, they are attached to the agenda, which is on Contra Costa County website for East Richmond Heights. So if you go into the county site, East Richmond Heights map or municipal advisory council has its own page. You can find the agendas for the last minutes, and this past the agenda, you'll find the 3 sets of.
Oh, do you have a copy here?
Ronnie, do you have any copies of the minutes?
No, are you signed up with to receive emails at all?
Yeah.
Yeah, so they're also sent, there's a link there in the email.
All right.
Yeah.
All right. Yeah, I didn't get, okay.
Yeah, it'll be sent out the
I
Friday.
think they are available. If you have any trouble, call.
Okay, yeah, I'll search for that. It's on the website.
Yes.
All right, very good.
So, can we get a motion to approve October minutes?
I motion that we approve it.
Second.
Okay, any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed? Motion carries, okay. Last, accept and approve the minutes of November 20th. Is there any
Okay, thank
discussion?
you.
Okay. For a motion?
Motion to approve.
Second.
Okay, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
I abstain, I was not here.
You abstain, okay. All right, so with 1 abstention, the minutes are approved. All right, we'll go right into our presentations. First, Ronnie, do you have anything from Supervisor Joya's office for us?
Yeah, I'm here.
Oh, there you are. Welcome, John.
Yeah, I was gonna make it, but I just left a group left my office, so I'm doing it from my office, okay?
All right,
Happy New Year, everybody, and my condolences, John, again to you. Just to offer that.
yeah, thank you, I did get your card.
Good. So we had our first board meeting of the year yesterday, and we have a new board member who took Supervisor Glover's place, Chanel Scales Preston. She's a Pittsburgh City Council member, and she worked for Congressman DeSaulnier, and so she is now our newest member of the board, which is great. I did want to say I'm in the process, and I know you have formed a new I'm looking at a new fire safety subcommittee, which is great. I am now serving as the chair of something called the Coalition of East Bay Governments. It's called the Wildfire Coalition of East Bay Governments. It includes a number of cities in both counties, Pinole, Richmond, El Cerrito, the county, Berkeley, Oakland, Alameda County. And we are meeting to look at how as a region we can continue to work together on vegetation management guidelines, and on grants and and with the fire districts. And I'm also looking at doing with a Richmond council member and fire agencies, including El Cerrito, we're looking at maybe doing a community town hall along the interface on current actions regarding wildfire management and prevention. So we'll tell you more about it as we plan it. It would be in the next couple months, but it would specifically be a community town hall that we'll do somewhere. It'd be by Zoom and in person, but we would do it somewhere along the interface. So we'll see where we do that. I know in the past when we did something, we did it up at Arlington Park in El Cerrito, so we may do it there. We could do it in El Sobrante, but we will see. Okay. And I know, and just to note, when is going to be the first meeting of your fire safety subcommittee?
We haven't determined that. We're gonna discuss it tonight and pick a date.
Okay, so but we are going to organize a larger town hall that's more than East Richmond. Okay, so along like, you know, Kensington, El Cerrito, East Richmond, Richmond, El Sobrante. I did want to address the view ordinance issue because I think that you had specifically wanted to know about whether to do an ordinance. So as you know, we passed the new general plan, and there's new policies in the general plan for East Richmond that specifically say talk about the importance of protecting views. For example, there's a principle that says East Richmond Heights panoramic views of San Francisco Bay, bridges, cities, and natural landscapes should be preserved. There's another policy that says when reviewing new development proposals, ensure that views of scenic natural features like the bay or distant mountains and the developed environment are substantially preserved. Condition new development projects to minimize impacts on neighbors and local roads, which may be compounded by existing small lots and narrow winding roadways. So these policies will give us now the ability to pass an ordinance, and if the community is interested, it would be the one we did in Kensington. I don't think we'd do a different one. The one in Kensington has worked well. And up there, the MAC makes recommendations on them. You could fulfill that same role before they go to the zoning administrator. So that's a possibility. And if there's interest, you know, we'll send out the ordinance. It'd be, again, it's an ordinance that basically it tries to get the property owner who's doing the room addition, which is often like a new story, to do it in a way to minimize the impact on people's access to light and air and views. So I wanted to at least raise that issue and see, is there interest in us looking at that ordinance for East Richmond?
Can I ask a quick question, John?
Yeah.
Is it also going to protect the solar panels that many of us have put on our homes? Because the neighbors' trees can get so big, it can block the light.
Yeah, so the tree issue is different. This only addresses new development, Victoria. Now, if a new development is to block a solar panel, yeah, I think it can address that. It doesn't address trees.
Okay.
Trees are a separate issue. It would, but would address development.
Okay, thank you.
And then quick question on like, just more housing, I guess, are there any like downsides to adding this ordinance that would then hinder new housing from getting built, just because
Yeah,
my generation
that's a
has a
really
hard
good
time.
that's a really good question. So it doesn't, I mean, so let's take two types of development. Most of what we saw in Kensington, and I assume we would see here, is adding on to somebody's home. Or if somebody wants to build an ADU, a second unit on their property. Now, let's take adding on to your home. If you're adding on to your home, you can still do it. It doesn't take away your right to add on. It just sets parameters about how you would do it. If you wanted to build a second unit on your property, under a county ordinance, under state law, they're called accessory dwelling units. If I forgot what the threshold is, if your ADU is below a certain square footage and a certain height, you get automatic over-the-counter approval. It doesn't go through a planning process. And that's a county ordinance that meets a state law because it's a state requirement. If you're, and I'm sorry, I forgot what the square footage is, whether it's 1,000 square feet or something, but there is a provision that second units under a certain square footage get automatic approval. If the second unit is above that square footage threshold, you can, assuming it meets other requirements, you can still, you go through the planning process, and the ordinance would apply there. Doesn't stop it, but would affect how it's done. And then if there's a vacant lot, the ordinance specifically acknowledges this doesn't stop the ability of somebody to build on a vacant lot, even if it blocks somebody's view. I mean, obviously they would try to do it to minimize that, but if somebody has a view of the bay over a vacant lot, it doesn't mean it's that you can't develop that lot and affect somebody's view, because there's no expectation that that lot's going to remain vacant. So it doesn't stop the development. It does affect how the development occurs.
Great, thank you.
And what we could do, it's a complicated ordinance. We have a summary of it, but it basically, it basically has principles that say that you want to balance the right to add on to your home with protecting or minimizing impact on a neighbor's views, and access to sunlight is the other, because if someone would have put a big mass against your house and it became dark, that's a value you want to protect as well, right? You don't want it to become dark. So it's those kinds of things.
It's good.
And again, it's
Stuff like
generally
zoning,
worked well in Kensington.
ADUs.
Yeah.
I wondered if in that, any off-street parking is addressed also?
Yeah, it does talk about parking in there too. Yeah. I mean, obviously, looking at parking, it's not going to stop it, but it does consider parking issues as well. Again, I think we want to see housing and, ADUs, like, again, if your second unit is below a certain square footage, you automatically get approved under state law. If it's above it, again, it doesn't stop it, but it has these factors that are considered.
I have a question. What does the company thinking about those prefabricated
I'm sorry, I missed the
home?
beginning. What did you say, Jinwei?
The question is, what about those prefabricated second unit, like a tiny home or something like that? How, what's the moving process like? Because normally, if you build a house, you have to go through planning and then go through building. But if a small like a unit is prefabricated, it just need to be directly put on site. And
Yeah.
what's the process like?
Well, I mean, any new sort of square footage on your property is
Mhm.
subject to, right, the planning and zoning laws again, it
Mhm.
all comes down to whether you're over a certain square footage or not. And if it's if it if it's under a certain square footage and it has the appropriate setback and height, you don't need any planning of you don't need any planning approval. You just it's approved over the counter automatically. And when you say a tiny home, I mean it,
I-
tiny home could be a second unit, but it still has to meet sort of building standards.
Yeah, so if the because that I had a neighbor that asked me that question. So if they purchase um, container home or some kind of a prefabricated home, and it can be just directly installed on site as a
Right.
ADU. And do they have to go through the building process? If they do, what kind of a document they need to provide from the manufacturer because the home is already built
Yeah.
in
No,
the
there
factory.
are prefabricated kinds of places that meet standards. Like you
Hmm.
can't just put it there and not have any electricity or sewage, for example.
Yeah.
It has to be hooked in for electricity and water and sewage. But there are some prefabricated units that are not
Hmm.
constructed from scratch that meet standards that could be part of it as well. It still has to meet a certain building standard. Some of these are pre-approved. Yeah, and we've seen those.
Okay. Okay.
So again, if there's interest, we can improve. We can maybe send you more of a summary. There was a lot of interest was expressed at our community meetings for the general plan. So maybe this is a discussion you have at some point, whether you want to recommend that we move forward with that Kensington zone view ordinance for East Richmond. Your slope isn't as steep as Kensington, so it's not always going to be an issue, where in Kensington it's an issue more frequently. Right now, as Victoria knows, she's been through it, you have what's called small lot review, which is not a particularly very efficient way. And it talks about compatibility with the neighborhood with regard to bulk and scale, a very subjective general term that has led, you haven't had it recently, but it's led to some appeals. And Victoria knows that she was doing, I forgot how old your kids were at the time, because they're
They
now
were
grown.
7 and 9.
Yeah, and
7 and 9.
how old are they now?
They're 32 and all.
Yeah, it was that long ago. I
I wanted
remember
them
it.
to have their own bedrooms, boy and a
Yes,
girl.
and so you were drug out over a year,
13 months of
and
hell.
with all sorts of appeals, and your neighbor was a lawyer and knew the system. So yeah, I mean, this is actually really is about protecting what people want to protect, views and access to sunlight. This idea that, oh, it has to be compatible with the neighborhood with bulk and scale. What does that really mean? Right? And so that's what currently is in effect, is that more general standard that was subject to some interpretation and abuse. Um, but really it is about views and light and air. So you can have discussion on that, right? Another item, anything else on this item? Okay. Another item,
Yeah.
I know this has come up on animal services. Bara, you've talked about some of this. So we have been talking to Jelly's Place, and Chevron, and Chevron may make available some vacant land they have in North Richmond in an industrial area for possible relocation of Jelly's Place. And I talked to Jelly's Place, in fact, today. So we're putting a meeting together. That's the shelter on Caltrans property on San Pablo Dam Road, and Caltrans is asking them to leave. So we are gonna do a meeting with county planning to go over what the permit requirements would be, because they have to go through county planning to build a code compliant kind of facility, to go through that with them and talk about that process. So that's gonna be our next meeting.
Is that near the Milo Foundation? Is that,
No, the potential site is off of Gertrude and the Parkway, way out further over toward the West County wastewater district. So out further out the Parkway a few miles off of Gertrude,
It's gonna be old dumps.
out there. So yeah, and we're gonna put a meeting together about that. What was the other item? Did I have another item?
There was a boat ordinance request as well that I sent over to Ronnie.
Which ordinance?
Boat ordinance
Boat.
regarding boats being
Storage
parked
of
on
boats.
the roadways.
Yeah, I don't think we've looked at it closely. Ronnie, which one was that?
No, it's not something that we looked at just yet, John.
Okay. Well, right now, I think anything you store has to technically be shielded from public view.
So I think the issue is, and this involves like the sheriff's department, they classify boats as vehicles. And so they follow the same, like rules as a vehicle, and but they would know more. But the issue is people are parking their boats on the road and they kind of know that loophole. And specifically in Hasport Heights, we have boats that have been there for 4 years. And code enforcement won't do anything because it's on the public right of way. And then the sheriff's department, I think, is having to get involved, and it can get difficult.
We'll look. Let me look at that. Yeah,
Okay.
I thought that I don't think people can just unlimited park their boat on the street for long periods of time, but we'll check. Okay.
Okay, thank you.
Ronnie will check on that. Okay.
Unless it's shielded from view.
Huh?
Unless it's shielded from view, I believe.
Well, but that's shielded from view on your property.
Right.
Yeah, I'll check. I did not think that you could just unlimited park it on the street, but we will check. Right, I know that it has to be shielded from view if it's like parked in your driveway or a side yard. Yeah. There was another item it was on my list to mention. So we got the so I talked about the view ordinance. We're gonna do and Michelle, we'll be talking to, I talked to Chief Burchard today about that town hall, so we'll circle back with you. That was a conversation that he and I had this afternoon. So you may not have reached you yet, but it will. It will definitely reach you. Oh, there was one other item. It'll come to me that I was going to mention to you. So what happens when I don't write them down? Anyway, may come to me later, and I'll text Ronnie. But those are the immediate issues I was wanting to raise with you. Oh, by the way, there is surface treatment is happening this summer, is what Public Works informed me. So there should be surface treatment this summer on the roads.
Mm.
we don't want to get PG&E.
John, Elizabeth has her hand up over here on
Yes.
Zoom.
Yeah, hi, thanks. I'm sorry. If I could go back to the view ordinance, I was fumbling around trying to figure out how to raise my hand.
Sure.
And I missed it. I really feel that we need to put something like that in place before the arguments arrive, because they will.
Yes.
They have happened and they will happen. So I feel very strongly about that. But I also wonder how it applies to things like the Adams Project.
Okay, so good question. The ordinance does apply to new construction, and there are, but it applies, there are policies already, we'll think about that in the general plan now for the first time that protect views. So, now, it doesn't mean that views won't be impacted. So that it is about minimizing those impacts. So I have to think about that. I mean, that is a large parcel of property. Anything you do there potentially will impact. At the same time, right? It may be a site for potential housing, and there'll be a process. It'll go through a land use process. So I think impact on views will be something that could be considered under the general plan principles currently. But whether it's, it could be included in the ordinance, I think. I'll have to look at it. I think any new development would come within that. But that's a very different dynamic than what we have in Kensington, because Kensington does not have any major parcels like that. They have more isolated vacant parcels. So we'd have to think about how to address that in that way. We wouldn't want to stop development from happening, the appropriate development on that site, but having it be minimizing impact on views.
Yeah, well, given the need for housing and the fact that a lot of statewide, there are many exceptions now being made.
Right.
In order to, really build up housing.
Right.
I'm wondering if that parcel, not being single family, how high could it go?
Yeah, I mean, there are height limits in the general plan. I mean, so there would be height limits, and I think that would go through a process. As you know, there are also how do I say this? There are also state exceptions to some of this that if certain conditions are met, but I think that will happen in the context of any development that gets proposed for that site.
Okay, I have
Good
a first-
questions.
we have a question over here, John, in the audience for you. Go ahead, sir.
Hi, yeah, so, in regards to views, I'm curious if this is my first time here, but I'm wondering if there's any movement to actually like improve the views, like in terms of undergrounding the power lines and all the lines everywhere, and in regards to the street resurfacing, shouldn't that happen before the streets get resurfaced, because they would have to like dig them all up again? I don't know.
Right. So Kensington has raised the issue of undergrounding a lot. So basically there's two ways to pay for undergrounding. The property owner pays, or can you get PG&E PG&E dollars or state dollars? Right now, there is no fund of money and no to publicly pay for undergrounding utilities either in Kensington or East Richmond Heights. The PG&E has been working with the Public Utilities Commission on undergrounding in certain areas around the state. East Richmond Heights isn't on that list. And when Kensington residents have raised the issue, there's been mixed sort of view. If the community voted and wanted to pay for undergrounding and then have it spread out on their tax bill over 30 years, it could do that. That would take a long process. Even after the Oakland Hills fire, there was, I understand there was some, at that time, I don't know if it was some PG&E contribution. There were also homeowners paying for it. So after dealing with this issue for many years in Kensington, I can tell you that it is a long and complicated process that would take many years. It would take community education and a majority of people wanting to vote to tax themselves to do that, because there's no current PG&E or state dollars available to do it.
Okay. I would just like to do maybe a time check. A lot of us don't have views, and I'm personally really here for fire preparedness and evacuation plans and all of that, the above. And, you know, if all of our houses burn down, we're not gonna have a view, right? Pacific Palisades, they don't have any views left. And
So
they don't
that's what
wanna
we're
live
gonna
there
do
where
on,
there
we're
are
gonna
views
do
'cause
this.
there's no infrastructure. So I'm just throwing
Yeah.
that out there. So,
So,
I mean,
so
I
we're,
appreciate the concern, but you know.
right, so we're gonna do a community town hall with Richmond, El Cerrito, Kensington County on this that will be more comprehensive to sort of have the fire departments there as well and look at addressing and talking about that issue. Yeah, I don't know if it's on your.
We're gonna spend some time today now, right?
I don't know what's on your,
Tonight.
is it on your agenda?
It's on the agenda, so I'm
Now,
just, you
so
know,
the
I don't
MAC
know if we
so
do
let-
time
let-
checks on
Right,
topics.
but let me be clear, so you can provide input, the MAC is advisory to the county,
Okay.
right? They don't make final decisions.
Just-
You can provide them input tonight, but we're gonna have a full discussion and presentation with appropriate folks. I don't think the MAC's prepared to say what to do, because I think we want to hear from the community, and you are welcome to provide input to the community, I mean, to the MAC, but this is all gonna be part of a larger discussion as well, yeah. And you're
but I
welcome.
think my interest is, you know, super local, my block, my couple of blocks.
Yeah.
You know, and all of that, and that's kind of
Right.
what I came here.
Yeah, I mean, you can provide input on all of that, that's fine, but things may not sound as local as you think, because in talking to our fire chief, what happens on one block affects others. And so if how the evacuation occurs affects East Richmond, El Cerrito, Kensington, you're all impacted in that, and that's why it's important getting all those agencies together. And one of the things we have talked about in Kensington, and we could do it in East Richmond, but they haven't agreed, is, you know, we could, through Public Works, have some streets have no parking on one side to increase evacuation if people are willing to give up parking, right? So if you have ideas that you want to express, Ronnie from my office is there and we'll take notes, and so we can hear those things, because that's one thing very local that we've thought about doing, is if there's some immediate things that can be done to restrict parking or make one-way streets, we are open to doing that. And when we were talking about that in Kensington, there were residents who didn't want to give up any parking. I think sometimes you may have to give up parking if you want to have, right, an evacuation route that works. Yeah, so give your input. That's great. I mean, the MAC's not making any decisions tonight. Let me be really clear, but you providing input is always important and welcomed.
John, it's Victoria again. So we've been discussing fire issues almost every single meeting in the last 4 or 5 years since we've been running this.
Right.
And we've been wanting to get the subcommittee going. And
Good.
we want to make sure there's fire breaks, that
Right.
there's enough tanks. One issue we've been talking about is getting a pump to pump the water up ground. So there's one like on Tassajara that needs to pump uphill, things like that. So
Yeah,
that's
you
one
should
reason
come
I
up with
want
your
the subcommittee.
recommendations. And as folks know, we've set aside $4 million a year for vegetation management along the interface, including money available for homes. And Michelle can talk about that. We're actually allocating $4.5 million every single year. And we've applied for grants. Sometimes we get them, sometimes we don't. Michelle can talk about that. And cameras, like the cameras out in Wildcat Canyon to spot a fire. You know, we're working with the Park District. That is why we also have this new board that I'm chair of with all the agencies where the Park District and East Bay Mud are there. Because, right, a fire starting on their property affects you, and it affects El Cerrito and affects Kensington. So we're looking at these from a larger scale.
Joanne?
Yeah, my question is, the zoning ordinance, the new zoning ordinance, do you know where the planning department is on developing the new zoning standards based on the adoption of the general plan? And then also, when would it be appropriate, how soon will it be appropriate to come and have a presentation about the new zoning standards?
So they are they now know that their next process, which will be multi-year, will be updating the zoning ordinance based on the new general plan policies. I don't think they've actually started that. They may be having internal discussions, but they haven't started official process yet, but will be shortly. So we can make sure that they come and make a presentation at whatever the appropriate time is.
Thank you.
John Royer has a question.
So back to the power lines, are you able to provide like a rough estimate of what the tax increase would be spread out over 30 years, just so we could at least have that information and like start?
So the
That
last
process.
time Public Works did an estimate, they did one in Kensington that was like 20 or 30 years ago. And all they did was say, well, if we apply a CPI to this, which is really rough, it could cost, I don't remember the amount per house. I mean, it was in excess of $40,000, $50,000 per house if you spread the cost out, but don't quote me. They would have to come and do an estimate. And then, if we said it was, let's say we said it was going to cost $75,000 per property, you could do calculations on interest rates, and if it's spread out over 20 or 35 years, what that would cost you, right? But I think we need to get a full estimate. The best estimate we have is something that Public Works did in Kensington, which is a different terrain with different cost. All I can do is pull that out, have them apply some inflation factor that would be very rough and not really give you the best, and say, what would that give you a range? But they have not done an estimate for East Richmond. And I can tell you, having dealt with this in Kensington, it's even when there's a strong support on a block, there's a lot of people who just don't want to do it. And ultimately, it needs a vote. It would require a public education campaign and a vote.
What percentage has to pass?
I'd have to check whether it depends if it's an assessment, whether it's majority protest or something. We would do a whole memo on that. I think if you are really serious about that, we would pull out and do a presentation on it. About that, all I know is it'd be expensive. And waiting in line for state money is, especially with everything going on around the state, it's really been up to local communities to fund it.
Thank you. Ma'am, if we could get maybe a bullet list of your concerns to Ronnie, okay? I know there's others that also want to provide some feedback on the fire issue up here, and I've got my own issues too, so.
Yeah, well,
let me just say, if you want to give local input, look, because there's fire issues that are very micro local, and then there's the macro, and they're related. If you have ideas about areas that you think, roadways that should have restricted parking, those are the kind of input you can provide for us to start looking at. We already are working on vegetation management and trying to get more funding and all of that. And you'll hear that from Michelle. But if you have some input about roads and what you would see, like what the fire chief and Office of Emergency Services will say, there's multiple evacuation routes and never one. It depends upon where the fire is, what else is going on, and that you can't have one evacuation route. So the question is, how do you look at, traffic throughput? And there are clearly some areas where restricting parking will make it easier on the narrow roads. If you have some ideas and input, provide those. And I mean, because we can look at that. And have already some ideas.
Yeah, so yes, that would be great. I think, one thing is that, on a more of I understand the macro going down to the micro. As John, you might know, I'm actually a retired nurse.
Right.
So I am used to these tabletops. I feel like there's just a lack of any plan. And I think that, having some more communication, a big town hall sounds great, but I think what would be great, and I'd be happy to list out, I don't want to take up too much time, but I'm happy to participate.
Yeah.
You know, how about a local neighborhood tabletop where we sit down and simulation work and all of the thing, you know, the BERT training, that, you know, the command center that, you know, I think a lot of people have taken the BERT training. Now another huge concern I have, of course, is Kaiser Richmond being the only ED. Are we going to be
Mhm.
setting up, you know, what's the plan from a healthcare, emergency healthcare standpoint? You know, are there other retired healthcare professionals in the neighborhood where we can set up, where we might have to set up little spot local first aid stations? That's kind of where my
Yeah.
brain is. I mean,
Yeah.
I may be like a little hyper
No, I
about
think,
this now.
and those are great discussions to have at your fire subcommittee. Sounds like when you get your fire
that
subcommittee
sounds good.
together, that's a
Yeah.
good venue to have that. Rather than at this meeting, when your fire subcommittee meets, you can start having those discussions. Yeah,
Okay, we've got Joanna back.
and
Yeah,
Michelle's here.
yeah.
Michelle's gonna say something later, right?
Yeah, we're gonna get to Michelle.
Okay,
So
I'm gonna.
I think it would be helpful, I don't actually see it on the agenda where it is that, when the map is gonna set the date and time of the fire subcommittee.
Right.
So if we could be sure that, you know, if people sitting here know where it is on the agenda, that's gonna happen. We can get people's.
We'll definitely schedule it tonight. I just want to know who's
Yeah.
interested in joining,
I'm saying when in the meeting are you gonna do that?
like in the next couple weeks.
No, I mean tonight,
Tonight.
when are you gonna have that discussion?
Not an agenda.
Before
Not on the
we
agenda.
end the meeting.
Okay, well,
next.
I actually have, that's going to come up under the subcommittee reports, which is item 5. So we'll be getting to that. We've got to get through our fire and highway
Okay.
patrol.
Let's move ahead then.
So, okay, all right, thank you, John, for that. We're
Thank
gonna
you.
go ahead and move on to the next, which is our presentation. Michelle, we've got the fire up next.
Hello,
welcome.
can everyone hear me?
Oh, yes.
Great. So thank you Supervisor Joya, Chair, Vice Chair, and MAC board members. Most importantly, the residents that are there in the room, eagerly awaiting the information. And I hope I'm able to answer some questions and provide you with some resources this evening. First, I'd like to mention our multiple deployments from Contra Costa Fire. Some of them are 2 type 1 engines, 1 water tender, a dispatcher, and multiple staff. Please keep in mind, while we are deployed, Contra Costa Fire remains fully staffed and prepared to serve the district. Please follow us on social media to receive regular updates. Next topic is the local hazard mitigation plan. The plan was submitted to FEMA in collaboration with the Contra Costa County Office of Emergency Services. Once that plan is approved by FEMA, we will move for fire board adoption. This plan identifies the infrastructure and capacity to respond to natural disasters and human-caused disasters. So again, I'll keep you updated as that plan is approved and moves through the local process. Next is the Contra Costa Wildfire Mitigation Program. We welcome all fuels reduction projects through our program portal. I'll place the link into the chat, and Ronnie also has the information for you. Identifying projects such as community tipping days, evacuation route cleanups, firewise strategic planning, removal of dead trees, shaded fuel breaks, vegetation management and fuel reduction projects, along with our low-income exterior hazard control program, and soon to be launched, the home hardening program. These projects can help reduce fuels now and will help us reduce our risk toward catastrophic fire in the future. More information about each project type and how to become a recognized FireWise neighborhood is available on our ConFire website. And again, I'll place that link into the chat. On to the local responsibility area maps. So local agencies were notified on November 1st by CAL FIRE that the local responsibility area fire hazard severity zone maps, or LRA maps, would be published this month. Given the incidents in Southern California, I anticipate that to be somewhat delayed while we respond to our neighbors to the south. The letter we received from CAL FIRE further described the actions required of the local agencies in adopting the state's provided maps within 120 days of their publication and outlined some of the intermediary steps that should be taken in the adoption process. So the district has communicated this information, including providing copies of the correspondence from CAL FIRE to all impacted cities in their jurisdiction and our unincorporated areas of our jurisdiction. Several questions remain regarding the overall process, and we are continuing to gather information from CAL FIRE, the League of Cities, the California Fire Chiefs Association, and others to help inform us of the process and prepare our city partners and ourselves for the actions we need to take early in this quarter. To summarize, these maps will establish moderate, high, and very high fire severity zones in the incorporated jurisdiction and the LRA portions of the unincorporated county areas. Updates and maps will be posted on the CAL FIRE and CON FIRE websites. And while there are many unknowns currently, I will provide updates throughout the process to keep you well informed. Next is the Fire Risk Reduction Community List. This application is not open to the public. This application period we anticipate will open in 2026 and is specifically geared towards fire planning. So it points the arrow at agencies and to allow us to have that introspective look of what we are doing in reviewing best practices criteria. And we are on tap to meet that application open period. Next, an update on the East Richmond Heights shaded fuel break. As you may recall from my last agency report, our CAL FIRE grant application to support this project was unfortunately denied. Our plan currently is to gather community support and reapply when the next grant is announced. Now, let me cover this a little more in detail. We anticipated that the CAL FIRE wildfire prevention grant would be announced in fall of 2024. As of today, CAL FIRE has not made this grant available. Therefore, our reapplication process has been delayed. I do plan to meet with Mr. Ramirez and complete a site visit of the Haspert Heights neighborhood once grant funding is clearly identified. I don't want to waste anyone's time here. Once I have a funding source, I do have early approval for the expansion of that that area of the wildfire shaded fuel break. Depending on the grant type, a letter template will be provided so the public has a way to voice your support and or concerns. Finally, I'd like to close on this because the young lady in the first row there mentioned evacuations. Evacuations and evacuation drills are the responsibility of our law enforcement partners. For any request regarding an evacuation drill, please, I ask that you work with the Contra Costa County Sheriff's Department and provide me with a scheduled date. CON FIRE will participate in any evacuation drill organized by the Sheriff's Department. Yeah. And with that, I hope that that's answered some of your questions. If not, I'm open to hearing feedback and questions from.
No, that makes sense.
Great.
Thank
you. Okay, anyone here in the room have any questions for the fire department?
I have a question.
Yes.
Is there anybody that can come to somebody's house and do a walkthrough, identify plants that should be removed and stuff like that? I've heard about that for other areas, but do we have that? Great question.
I think what you're referring to is a defensible space inspection, and please feel free to give your information to Ronnie, and we'll work to make that possible.
Ronnie is right there.
Oh, thank you. So are you saying that there is a person that could come to my house, or you're gonna think about finding a person that could do that?
Oh, no, I'm not going to think about it, ma'am. I will absolutely get an answer to you. I just need a way to communicate back to you the answer that I received from leadership.
Okay. I mean, I can also just email you. I think I've done that in the past.
Oh, great. I look forward to hearing from you.
Okay.
Okay, anyone else? Anyone on Zoom with any questions? Yes, ma'am.
Hi. Do we have, this might be a strange question, but do they have enough water or resources in the reservoir for the, like they had some?
Yeah, that is one of the concerns which I'm going to bring up for the committee. And we have talked about this before. I don't want to really go into it now, but I should mention, since you brought it up. All of East Richmond Heights is on a gravity flow. All of our water comes from the water tank up at the golf course. Okay, the water going into the tank is pumped from a pumping station way down on Carquinez next to the school. And I saved all the paperwork and the correspondence I had with East Bay Mud about my concern. If PG&E does a planned power outage, their wires go right to that building. And the answers that I got in the past is that they were gonna look at this, they were gonna bring in generators. They did put a generator down at one of the main pumping plants on Amador, but they have not done that to that building, and that is a major concern that I will carry through to this committee. Because if they do a planned power out and they cut the power to that pumping station, there's no way to get water back into the tank. So that is a very valid point. We shouldn't discuss it anymore tonight because we've done it, but this will be another round of that.
Yeah.
And I will personally carry that.
Needed an emergency generator for it.
Yeah, well, we've all heard now about Los Angeles, they ran out of water. John and I spoke about what happened in Oakland, that's when the same thing happened there. They didn't have water, and they ran out of water in the fire hydrants during the Oakland fire, so. Okay.
And John, can I say something about that?
Yeah.
I was on the East Bay Mud Board during the Oakland Hills fire. And one of the things that East Bay Mud did since then, and I'm glad you followed up, is that we had a program when I was on the East Bay Mud Board in the 90s of installing standby generators at pumping plants so that if the power went out, then the pumping plant would pump the water back up into the reservoir to be fed by gravity. And so I think the key question to East Bay Mud is which pumping plants have those standby generators to replace any lost power that occurs. And I know those generators were put in at a number, and they continue to put them in. And it sounds, I know you've had some contact with them, and we can follow up to see which pumping plants have those generators. And we're glad to follow up and just do a request to get that list.
I just want to say that given current events, that's a more urgent question to get clarified as opposed to the bureaucratic answer it seems like John got.
Yeah, so let me, we'll follow up to try to do a request about which pumping plants have standby generators. And I know the goal was for them to have them to refill those gravity tanks, and we can follow up. And I know something about the system, right? Having been on their board for 10 years and when they were installed, because that was the problem in Oakland Hills. When the power went out, they lost power to refill those reservoirs.
Okay, yes, ma'am.
I guess I'd like to ask the fire, Michelle. Are there any plans for water catchment systems to supplement water supplies?
So as far as water resources, the Fire Protection District are not the appropriate agency to be commenting on water resources. But again, I hear the chair commenting that he plans to follow up with East Bay Mud, and that request is appropriately placed.
Okay.
One quick question, does CAL FIRE have any, our district, do they have like planes that can do drops with water from the bay? Or is there a way to like quickly request that in the event of a fire?
Right. So mutual aid applies throughout the state, and as we see interstate currently. Last year, there was a partnership with PG&E, which Confire placed with PG&E's help, placed a helicopter at our Byron training center. It's a large flat surface for a period of 3 months. And we're hoping that for that to continue, but in the coming years, that's an important aspect to fire, right? And I think, just if I could plug Firewise one more time, I hear fear coming from the public.
Yeah.
I understand that fear. I shared in a previous meeting that Supervisor Joy and I were at. My grandparents lost their home to fire. It was a catastrophic loss. They were not in the home at the time. I understand this on a very personal level. The way that we combat fear is through knowledge and a plan. Fear causes us to panic, and we have a fight or flight response. What I would like to do, and we've talked about, getting Firewise going, meeting, doing education, as Supervisor Joya mentioned, getting information out to the public and finding resources, understanding what to do on a red flag day, what to put in your go bag, where to place that go bag, right? The simple things that you can do to save yourself moments, like backing your car into your driveway rather than pulling in, can really have an impact on that overall response that you have personally. So I'd like to say that anyone that is ready for education, an event, reaching out, I can have a small tabletop talk, right? Up to a large scale event, everything in between. As your county coordinator, I'm looking to address those fears and concerns with information, and I look forward to serving you.
Nice.
Thank you.
All right, thank you, Michelle. Anything else from anyone? Okay, thanks, Michelle. We appreciate it.
Thank you, Chair.
Okay, and with that, I'd like to welcome Lieutenant Holland and the Sergeant.
Good evening. Lieutenant Holland, Sheriff's Office, Space Station. This is our new patrol swing shift supervisor, Sergeant Bradenberg.
Hello.
So, bring your binder and copy. It looked like we had a glitch in the system because it looked like for November stats, it kind of duplicated October. So I'm working into that and try to get that fixed. For December, we had 63 calls for service in East Richmond Heights. The only really thing of significance is that we had an auto burglary in the 6,000 block of Felix Avenue. Where they broke into a car and stole some stuff. That was pretty much it. Regarding like the fire evacuations, any of that assistance, when the meeting that Supervisor Joy discussed, when that meeting is set, that fire meeting, or your subcommittee fire meeting, shoot that information to me, or if Ronnie can get it to me. If I can make it, I'll be there too to show up and whatever support I can.
Sorry, quick question. So there's a boat that I've been calling in on 5959 Harborview Avenue.
To dispatch?
Yeah, it's been there since 2018. I've called it in like 3 to 4 times now.
59?
Yeah, 5959 Harborview. And so part of the concern is our neighborhood, we don't have sidewalks. And so our roadways are kind of littered with boats and things that are kind of blocking people from being able to not get run over, so.
Yeah, and the county ordinance, we recently went through Port Costa, and there's one specific trailer that we're working on in Officer Bronte right now. There is a county ordinance where it has to be screened from public view. We can start giving it the ticket. That gets fines and gets increasing, and after it accumulates so many tickets, then that would give us the authority to tow it.
Okay.
Otherwise, if we just green tag it, the 72-hour tag, they move 5 feet, then it satisfies that requirement. So it's better that we actually give it the ticket with the fines and let that stack up. If they don't pay the fines, then we can get it towed, or they can keep paying the fines at some point.
Okay, cool, thank you.
I have a question about that too. So is there any, so-called leverage or impetus to deal with it because it would restrict emergency services in the case of a fire evacuation or?
I can't just,
you can't,
I mean, yeah, there's a process that
but
we have to go
there
through.
are other agencies that would have some kind of, ability to influence that.
Yes, sir.
No, okay, because
Yeah.
I mean, it is a problem with, it creates a bottleneck.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
And it's
No,
not, it's just when people are
understand.
walking their dogs at night, I mean, even that's dangerous, but
Yeah.
during a fire event, it would certainly
create a bottleneck.
Yeah, we have a park enforcement officer assigned to us, so I'll
Yeah.
get with him tomorrow morning
Okay.
and get him up here and we'll both come up here and take a look at it.
Thank you, guys, man. Go ahead.
Yeah, I just kind of a quick question. At other presentations I've been to about the sheriff's coverage of our area, that just the expectations that you also, my understanding is you also have to cover North Richmond and here, and that we should kind of expect to be, I mean, you know, if there's only 3 or 4 of you and there's our area, I mean, maybe you can elaborate a little bit on that, you know, what for us as a neighborhood, you know, what can we do?
Yeah, so how the beats are divided, so the beat deputy that's responsible for East Richmond Heights does also have North Richmond and Rollingwood neighborhood. So yeah, if they're over there dealing with a call, it may take them a few extra minutes to get up here. They're supposed to be up here doing patrols when they're in between calls. You know, as Rollingwood and North Richmond, we have a deputy, the next closest one would be El Sobrante deputy. And from there we go up north, Terre Hills, Crockett, Rodeo, Port Costa, all those areas.
So if we're talking about evacuations, that, I mean, obviously that, and it sounds like that would be with law enforcement. So that would all be kind of coordinated with all hands on deck kind of situation, I mean.
Yeah, if a fire were to break out up here, everybody would be coming up here to help out with whatever they could. Whether it's sounding the siren, going with the PA system, telling people to evacuate, going door to door with fire, whatever fire needs, or try to keep the roads cleared. We'd be doing whatever we could. Yeah, it'd be all hands on deck.
Yeah, I mean, I noticed in Kensington, they do have signs up with evacuation routes mapped out, and is there a plan for us to be doing something similar here?
Not to my knowledge, that there's an actual route, and where that could get bottlenecked is if that's what you're gonna depend on, and if that gets blocked or if fire breaks off that access. You know, you just gotta kind of know the neighborhood and know what other points can I get out besides just this one.
Okay, but for emergency planning, you kind of have to assume those pain points, right? So what if somebody, you know, and everybody gets freaked out, right? Deer in the headlights, so, you know, yeah, you have these evacuation routes with the pain points. And, you know, like Kensington has the signs up about, you know, this is rough. I mean, are you suggesting that we don't have any evacuation routes? You're probably not suggesting that.
I didn't say that, no.
No,
I
I'm
said,
just.
don't rely on just that one route to
Okay,
get in and out, right?
right.
Know the neighborhood, know the area, just in case that route is no longer accessible. As far as putting signage up and routing, that would be for the MAC board to go through the supervisor's office to establish that and get probably the engineer, the roadway people in here to figure out what's best that won't hamper fire trucks and police coming in, that you all can get out.
Yeah, well, I think
That's
that
what
would
we
be,
need, help with
that's what we
strategy.
need, that,
Strategy.
yeah,
So
absolutely.
that should go to this subcommittee.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah,
And
okay.
give me the meeting date and I'll be there. I'm not gonna be the one to sit there and say, use this route. I'll give my input, my guidance, I'll work with fire and we can establish these. You know, get with Kensington, what criteria did they use to establish their routes? And then we can work from there in the subcommittee.
Because also, Michelle was saying that they have a project to identify the map of this area and come up with evacuation plans. So it sounds like that's on the table, that's gonna come to you guys, and then you're gonna work together. But it just is in process, it hasn't been.
I would like to shoot for the first week in February if you're available.
Yeah, I'm around. Yeah, and as far as the evacuation process goes, it would just be us coming up here to tell you guys, you need to leave, you need to leave, you need to leave.
No,
Get out.
Because we can't help everybody out, we're gonna make sure the roadways are open and clear, so if we have to get a tow truck up to a car, push a car out of the way, whatever we gotta do. But we're not going to be helping each person individually come down.
Well, no, and that's where, you know, I think for us to organize is our individual neighborhoods and to have a little bit of, we call it simulation work, right? And
Yeah.
you know, that, yeah, you could, there's what, 4 of you there, you know, so, you know, what can we do as citizens to, you know, become organized and think about these things, like people don't wanna think about it.
And that's
but
why
what
those
can help.
firewise meetings are great, because you all sit down in your neighborhood and you can discuss, oh, you know, this is the person that you know, 123 Main Street is wheelchair bound, they're gonna need somebody to help them.
Yeah.
This is what you need to pack in your go bags, this is other things you need to have. You need to pay attention, get certain apps on your phone or social media, all that stuff will come at those meetings and you can get all that information.
Yeah.
And then you can start making your own personal plan and then work as a neighborhood.
Yeah.
Joanne in the back has a question.
Yeah, well, first I think we should get Steve Gutenberg to come help us, I don't know.
All right.
All that, Los Angeles.
Who is that?
A local actor who's been organizing his neighborhood and doing a lot of work. Number two, that Adams used for training, law enforcement training, do you know if there's any upcoming law enforcement trainings planned at Adams? Are those
Not from us.
Okay.
If our SWAT team might, but I'm not on the SWAT team anymore, so I don't know where they're training. And I know other local agencies do come up here and I don't know the dates or anything.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah, without knowing really anything about this, it sounded like the report about crime means very minimal crime in this particular area. And I'm just wondering about historical perspective and area perspective, is that pretty consistent with what it's been for the last year or two? Is that, are we doing anything right or wrong? How does that compare to
No,
adjacent
there's
jurisdictions?
nothing trending up.
It's gotten better from our neighborhood.
Yeah,
it seems to
and there's a lot of people up here compared to some of the other areas that we have that actually, when they see something, they call it in. And we get us up here, or if we're close by, we get there fast. So that helps, right? We only have so many eyes and ears and we rely on everybody out here to call in whatever you guys see. And that's been working well up here.
Is there a phone number that's good for contacting people, the police that are gonna just for our area versus the central police department?
Well, our dispatch is in Martinez. I can give you the non-emergency phone number.
Yeah, I mean, but don't they handle everyone, isn't there a special phone number just for East Richmond Heights that we can use, or?
No, sir, it'd be our dispatch.
Just
Our
a regular
dispatch talks directly.
and then just tell
directly
them
to us.
you're in East Richmond Heights, and then they pick the right.
They'll want your address and then they'll figure it out.
Yeah, you give them the address and then tell them what the issue is.
Okay,
and
very good.
They get on the radio with us.
There's somebody here, Michelle had her hand up, I don't know if she wants to respond to that.
I do. Thank you, Ronnie. I wanted to offer a clarification on evacuation route cleanups. This is to remove the vegetation along an evacuation route. So cleanup activities focus on maintaining fire access routes and fire trails in our highest wildfire threat areas, and includes vegetation management to enhance the ingress and egress of emergency vehicles and residents during a wildfire emergency. So again, this is a vegetation management approach of roadside vegetation. If there is I just wanted to make sure that there wasn't any misinformation out there. Planning projects such as the installation of an evacuation route should be addressed at your city level of government. The mitigation program is for fuels reduction, vegetation management and fuels reduction. So I want to be careful about how the information is received, and I want to make sure that everyone is very clear and doesn't have any questions on that. The establishing routes for evacuation, the Contra Costa Transportation Authority currently has a $1.5 million grant to establish what they call an evacuation study to determine what routes based on population density and other criteria of what the most viable evacuation routes will be. That is a work in progress. When people are thinking about the wildfire mitigation program, I want you to think about roadside vegetation and fuels reduction, not evacuation planning. Thank you.
Yes, Michelle. Yeah, I'm just curious, do they have pedestrian evacuation routes? Because I had heard at this fire that they told people to get out of their cars and just walk. So is there just auto or vehicle evacuation routes, or do they develop pedestrian? evacuation also.
Lieutenant Holland, would you like to weigh in on how you would like to have people evacuate?
Well, if people have to leave their cars behind, I just ask they leave the keys in, so if we have to clear them out, right, that's one of the big issues they had down south. As far as pedestrian, that comes down to knowing your neighborhood, knowing how to get. I can't tell you, use this route, because that's not my field of expertise, I'm not an emergency operations person, right? So that would be for other people who are smarter than me to plan that kind of stuff, and just know your neighborhood. If you only know the one little part, that you come off Main Street and get to your house, start driving around all of East Richmond Heights and Arlington, and get all the way into Kensington, so maybe you have to get up that way. Maybe you have to go down a different route that you're not comfortable or don't know, start driving around. And then you'll see those things, oh, look, there's a footpath, and you had to cut through here and come down here to this road. Can you get through? Is there the fence, okay, to this property, where Adams, and who has the keys? Does anybody local have that stuff?
I recommend walking it too. Pam and I walk the neighborhoods, and we really get to see the neighborhoods intimately.
Yeah.
So I recommend walking it.
Thank you, Lieutenant Holland. And the one thing that I would add is when a badged member of service, whether it's law enforcement, fire department, anyone gives you an instruction during an emergency, if they tell you to go left, please don't go right. Right? I mean, really, they're trying to save life. And so following those instructions is so important. And again, I speak to that fight or flight, right? Sometimes people aren't processing information at the same speed as we are here in a casual meeting. And those things are slowed down. And your badged members of service, both law enforcement and fire department, are specifically trained in communication efforts and communication skills to get the point across to you quickly. They don't mean to be brash or rude, or, they're telling you, go left, go now. And to respond to that and do exactly what they ask of you. They're really trying to help save lives.
Yeah, so December 3rd, there was a break-in a car in front of my house, and Sheriff Gordon came by. Like, the person who was dealing with it said he was great, and so thank you for that, but it sounds like it's not in your report, that there was this call-in, he came and he spoke to
Yeah,
the
that was the
owner.
one on Felix that I.
Harborview.
So like I said, our system was glitchy when I looked at the numbers, pulled up for November, since there was no meeting in December for November's numbers. They were pretty much same as October.
Right.
So there's a little glitch, so I kind of went through some of the other reports manually to get what I could at least for December, and tech services has my request to get that fixed, so hopefully next month it'll work better.
Just props to Sheriff Gordon, because he was great.
All right, anything else for the sheriff's department?
I'd just like to say thank you. The very few times I've had to call you guys have been right there, and it's been awesome. So appreciate your service.
Thank you. All right. Thank you. All right, thank you both very much. We appreciate it. Have a good night. Okay. All right. We'll go now to the Highway Patrol. Officer Zaid.
Good evening, everybody. Before I begin, I do want to take a moment and express my condolences to John. So my thoughts and prayers are with you and your loved ones during this difficult time.
Thank you.
So I'm going to keep it short and sweet. We're starting the new year off, and I don't really have anything new to report. Same stuff that we've been reporting every meeting. I want to start off the year by hearing you guys and kind of what are some concerns that you would like to see us address. And that could be enforcement as well as education. So I'd just like to open the floor up and kind of hear your thoughts so I can plan this year accordingly.
Well, I would like to actually start with, this is almost the same old story. We've got Arlington Boulevard, which is the other freeway to Berkeley. And it's just on weekdays. The morning people, a lot of the people are reasonable, but there are people that are reckless and speeders. And it's especially in the morning at the time that we've got kids going to 3 different schools. So, you know, that's an issue, and then the afternoon is maybe not quite as bad as the morning. You know, people are going home, but they're still racing down Arlington. You know, this is especially bad in front of the Arlington Market, which is, you know, one of the children's crosswalks. In front of the Arlington Christian School, 2 blocks down, and at Mira Vista, which of course is where, you know, we've got the flashing light when it's red, and of course people just, they don't stop there, they go right through it, so. That's Old Faithful, that hasn't changed any, it does happen to get better after CHP and the sheriff have had cars sitting there during school hours. I see, first of all, it's like, you know, fishing in a barrel, you're gonna definitely write tickets and stop people for violating the law up there. But that's the worst area that I see, and I have a clear view from my front window and my security camera of what's going on with most of that. You know, I was sad to see a speeder coming up the hill, which my camera picked up, smashing into a baby deer, knocking it 75 feet up my street. But anyway, that's my sort pain.
Can I, if I can just ask, since you are so close, I think you've mentioned in past meetings, do you see, is it effective when we get the trailer out there, the radar trailer?
Yes, it is, definitely. I know there's another trailer the county has, I'm not sure where it comes from, but when your radar sign is out there, yeah, I think it definitely helps, makes a difference. Okay. Even if you guys were there maybe just once or twice a month, people are gonna see it, they're gonna start maybe paying attention.
Any suggestions on which part of the month? I mean, I know it's all, it would be all the same, but just.
Yeah, no, it's the weekdays, and the worst part is when Interstate 80 has issues and is backed up because, you know, Google Maps is telling everyone to come up Arlington. You know, that's when it's the worst, you know, the worst time.
Is it more going uphill or downhill or?
I think the problem is more uphill because people are trying to get to work, you know.
In the morning.
And another bad morning, I will say this. Another bad morning are Tuesdays because that's when the garbage is being picked up. And if they get started early in the morning, they're holding up a lot of cars. You know, and so people are always racing around. But I sent to Captain Novacell, I did a study from my security cameras of how many cars on Arlington. I went back for a couple of months and he's got that towards the end of last year. There's way over 1,000 cars every 24 hours on the weekdays on Arlington Boulevard, which is a lot.
Okay.
Yes.
So I have a related question about Arlington, but I don't know if it's the right question for Officer Reed or someone else, just a point of information or inquiry to the MAC. So that there's no way really to safely cross Arlington at Zinn Street, right across Zinn Street, next to that Mira Vista Park. A lot of people take their dogs, their kids to that park in the mornings and in the evenings. And like you said, I mean, it's a freaking highway, it's really unsafe. And sometimes I have to stand there with my dog, like looking around for a good minute before I'm able to cross safely. Is it possible to discuss adding a sidewalk, not sidewalk, a crosswalk there? Like what does that even entail?
Yes.
So I'm actually starting a pedestrian and road safety subcommittee where we're gonna start kind of addressing some of this with more like an organized voice. I think Joanna, we said I was gonna be meeting the 2nd.
It's in the newsletter.
Okay, yeah, I think it was, so the first meeting's gonna be February 12th, I think at 6 p.m. or 6:30.
Yeah, February 12th at 6 p.m.
6 p.m. And it'll be virtual through Zoom. So I should probably get your email so I can send you the link.
Perfect, thank you. And that'll be the right venue to bring this up.
I think so, because it's kind of complicated, because you have to go through like public works, some of it's like,
people.
yeah,
That would be a fourth intersection, definitely be considered.
yeah, and they already came out to Hasford Heights and they said that we don't need stop signs, which I disagree, because I've almost had 2 or 3 accidents there. Maybe more like 2, where there's 2 roads that just kind of combine, there's not even a sign that they're merging in. So there's like a lot of work that needs to be done.
Thank you so
Yeah,
much.
I did hear that, and this is from the principal of Arlington Christian School. That's where Arlington turns, okay, and the crosswalk is down too far. When you're coming down Arlington, going north, he said he thought it was somebody from planning. I'm not sure who, and I didn't get to you with this yet, Ronnie, but somebody in the county planning is looking at moving the crosswalk, I believe, up. So I just.
Hey, John, this is John, Joya, having your committee, the best way to do it is to do a list of all the concerns. And then remember what we do is we do a site visit with the traffic engineer. So what you should do is identify the intersections that you're most concerned about, and then we will go out with the traffic engineer to inspect them.
Okay, that's good. All right, I'll get there. Great. Thank you. Okay. Anything else for highway patrol now? We haven't really talked too much about Hasford Heights. I know they do come up that way.
Hi, this is Jinwei. I just have some thoughts about Arlington traffic. There are several intersections going to Arlington as a stop sign, but because Arlington is a slope, so sometimes there are a lot of cars just parked like right close to the intersection. So that blocks the view of people who try to make a left turn, try to make a right turn. And I personally saw a couple potential, collision could happen. So I would just thought if the highway engineer can also just check on all those intersections, especially when the Arlington slope up or slope down, and to say if there should be just a piece of a curb should be red, so there should be no car parked there, so people can see the traffic, upcoming traffic on Arlington, so they can make a left turn or right turn, or something like that.
I believe as far as, and I hope I understood that last part right. With the at the intersection, there is a new law that you have to park a certain amount of distance from the crosswalk. That way it gives you that visual that I guess that high visual horizon of what's going around. So nothing should be parked up that close. But I think it goes back to what John was saying earlier of identifying all of the intersections that need to be looked at or evaluated, so that they can kind of do a site walkthrough and figure out what would work for that area.
Yeah, I think it's just around the Christian school, Arlington Market, and also the kind of a traffic light to getting into Mira Vista. So that's a stretch of street which is on a pretty steep slope. I think every single road probably needed to be looked at.
Okay.
Yeah, Jinwei, we've got that intersection on the list, so.
Okay, thank you.
Just following on this new law that the officer mentioned, which I also saw in Berkeley, like if you park next to the crosswalk, they're gonna ticket you because that's how Berkeley is. Maybe we involve planning to actually paint those spots red so people know that we don't have that many spots on Arlington, let alone other places that are like this. But
yeah, exactly. They should be painted red because right now people just park whatever.
Law,
Yeah. Okay.
On Hasford Heights, I think this might fall under California Highway Patrol as well. We have bunch of like teenagers that sit in their cars, and some of them are like adults too, but they're like smoking weed and drinking, and they're like operating the vehicle after they're done. But so the sheriff's department's been coming out to kind of monitor this area, but I feel like if they're in the vehicle doing these things, I feel like, you know, CHP might be able to do something too, and it's always a problem around midnight on weekends.
That's actually, I mean, that's our bread and butter, right? If somebody is drinking, driving, you know, and I know our guys are, especially our graveyard shift. I mean, they are motivated as soon as briefing is done to go out and find that, because, you know, we potentially save lives getting those people off the road. So I will mention it.
Is that considered loitering that late at night?
I mean, if it depends. So I think if you would definitely need, if they're parked legally, the officer would need a little bit more to get into the car. So if they were to drive through and then potentially see the smoke and then, you know, smell it, they have probable cause to contact that person, you know, or at least at most there's something there, but they wouldn't be able to just randomly you know, drive up to a car and contact that person unless it's a consensual encounter. Then you go, again, you'd have to be careful on how to approach that.
And so we've been, I think, calling it in to, because it's kind of a gray area, it's a private road that's part of the county, but then the way they get into, like, the spot where they park is part of Richmond. And it's like part of the county road, so I don't know, do we call it in to you guys? I think right now it's just being called into Richmond PD, but it seems like this might be something you guys can help too. Because it's just the same, like, it's the same little neighborhood. There's only one entrance in and out to that section.
Where is it? Where is it specifically?
It's Liz, do you know?
1518 Barth Avenue would be an address. It's a vacant lot, but that's where they.
1518. I'm sorry, what was the street?
Barth, BARTH.
It's an unusual area because you got the Richmond city limits and twists through there, and you have to go from county and to the city. And we had a meeting, and Captain Novosel was there too, with Richmond Police and the sheriff to, you know, take a look at what is going on up there. But this one issue, I guess, just continues to fester up there.
I'll check our maps to see if that is our, I guess, our jurisdiction, as well as kind of what would it be considered, and then that way I think we'd have a better idea of how to move forward in dealing with that. I will mention it to Captain Novosel and our you know, graveyard shift, and if, you know, freeways are dry and they're not getting anybody, they'll make a sweep over there and see if they find something.
Okay.
It's pretty much every day at sunset as well, especially weekends.
Okay, so weekends and then
yeah, there's a great view from up there, that's why.
I see. We're gonna ruin some evenings.
Like the Grizzly Peak of East Richmond Heights.
I'm gonna have to go check that.
Okay, anything else for highway patrol? Okay, thank you so much.
Can I just ask one more? Is there, so I want to focus on this year in particular. I do want to focus on doing more traffic education as well to supplement the enforcement. If anyone has a venue or would like to see a class related to that or any type of traffic enforcement, we offer a plethora of classes, from Start Smart classes, which is from 15 to, I believe, 19 for young drivers. And then we offer Age Well classes, which is for more of our senior citizens, on how to better evaluate their driving. But in between all that, we have a plethora of classes that we offer. And if you feel that, you know, you have a venue or something you would like to bring us along, please feel free to contact me. If someone could pass them my email, and if you guys want to reach out, that would be awesome.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. If that's it, all right, thank you for being with us tonight. Thank you. So we'll go into our discussion items. Our item 1 is discussion and vote on moving the monthly meetings back to bi-monthly. Would someone like to start on that?
Well, when we first started this committee, it was every quarter, so we did it 4 times a year, and then we switched it to every other month.
6 times a year.
Which was perfect, I thought. Then I guess a meeting I wasn't here, it got voted in, they would have it every month, which is a little bit difficult. My husband's retired and we travel a lot, so it's hard for me to commit to every month. I mean, sometimes I could do a Zoom, depending on where I am, but I don't see why we can't go back to the every other month. It's not as little as the every quarter.
Yeah.
So that was my request.
Well, I have a problem with doing it monthly, and I was the no vote at the time. I just.
Yeah.
It's a personal thing for me, and I would have to, if we're gonna continue monthly, there are a couple of months I will not be able to be there, which means you will have to lead the meeting.
Right.
Anyway, go ahead.
I'm proposing every other month starting this month, so, you know, January, skip February, have March, skip April, you know, all the way through, so we have November, let's see, January, March, May,
Skip December.
July, September, November, so we'd have 6 meetings this year.
Okay, Royer?
So I would have to object, mainly just because there's like a lot that needs to be done in the neighborhood, given that like all the concerns that people have been bringing up. And then I think this is the year that we're positioned to be the most effective with all the subcommittees that we're kind of kicking off.
Well, if you object and we decide to do every month, I don't have an objection to that as long as some can be Zoom. Because I can't always be here in person. If I'm in town, I'm here in person. But if I'm traveling, I'm not always, sometimes it's, you know, like 12 or 18-hour time change.
Yeah, I know, you know, our positions are appointed. We're
Right.
appointed, and the county does expect us to, you know, serve and be there. Bara, Joanne?
I'd like to hear from what people think, about our neighbors, well, how do the neighbors feel about how frequently we meet and how important it is to you?
I like the monthly cadence just because I feel like Casper Heights is having to catch up on this. We haven't had any representation in our neighborhood that I know of in the past, so we have a backlog of issues, and it does seem like things get done pretty slowly, but if we keep on this monthly cadence, it seems like we might have a chance of actually.
And that is an area that has been absorbed recently that was never in this group, so maybe they could do a subcommittee for that area. Because they have specific needs.
Well, I was gonna say, I mean, almost no one shows up to these meetings, but it's great to see the people tonight and to see the interest. Maybe there's a little more energy to that. And right, how do you balance?
I think the fire is a big issue because people are concerned.
Now, will that wear off like it often does? I hope not. But
No, I don't think it will.
Or maybe
We're all
if
concerned about it.
alternate month, you have some kind of working meeting to flesh out ideas or something.
Yeah.
I mean, we need to
Joanna?
decide.
I like frequent meetings, so it's just easier for people to keep track of when it needs, if you just say it's every third Wednesday. But I also really liked not having a meeting in December. So to me, what's important is just that it's very decided that we have it and we publish the plan, the schedule of the year. So perhaps monthly, but plan to take take off December. And if people are kind of stressed, you know, maybe one of the ones right before or right after the Arts and Music Festival could be for too. But I think what's important is the predictability. Like make a plan, make a schedule and stick to it for the whole year.
Okay, and Pam, Joanna, there's no issue with us staying on the third Wednesday.
For the churches.
For the church.
The facility, you're very welcome here every single month.
Okay, all right, I wanted to ask Pam, did you have any consideration on this when we meet?
Pam, can you hear us?
Either way, obviously, you know, my schedule's full just like everybody else. And I would prefer every other, but I'll go along with what you all decide.
And Shinwei? Your thoughts?
My thought is, I don't mind, every month or every other month, but some months I might have just to join by Zoom because I just, not able to, get here in person.
Yeah, you know, when we first did this, I was kind of on the fence, but there's a lot of things going on now.
I just want to mention, she was the chairman before I was, so she has a lot of experience with this since it was founded.
And so, and I think, you know, I was the one who brought it up to change from quarterly to every other month, so continuity is really important, and I think we lose a lot of continuity if we don't. And I think there are regulations that allow board members or MAC members to miss a meeting or two. And it just, if you miss every other meeting, it becomes important, but I think there's a regulations, you can miss 1 or 2 meetings, and we do have Zoom available.
It's 1 or 2 a year.
1 or 2, yeah,
Yeah.
and we do have Zoom available, so I am kind of in favor of continuing with, every month and getting rid of December, I'm for that, because it's the third, is it the third Wednesday? It's so close to everything, so I agree. And you can always cancel a meeting too, if there's nothing imminent that we need to discuss, so.
Okay, well, it sounds to me like we're going to continue meeting every month then.
I think so, yeah, I mean.
Okay.
Do we need to vote? Do we need to vote?
No, we don't need to, because
But
we
it
already
says
said.
so, we should, I think we used to.
Is there a motion to continue the monthly meetings?
I'm motion.
I second.
Okay, any other discussion? Joanna?
Could we get a paper that can sit right there on the table that lists the exact dates of the 2025 meetings?
Yes. Yeah, actually, and Ronnie, we should have that page posted at the Arlington Market too.
Yeah.
Just showing the whole year. Okay.
And in the dog park.
And in the, okay, sure, yeah.
I just wanted to add.
People go there. You're right, yeah.
A friendly amendment to the motion, except December.
Except December, so
Okay.
we will not meet in December of this year. Okay, all right.
Might that also go on the website?
Oh, yes. Yeah, Ronnie, our website needs some updating. Okay. All right, any other discussion? All right, all those in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, here we go. Okay. Discussion item 2, vote ordinance, and I know we talked about that. So, okay. So we'll go on to our subcommittee reports. The first is the Land Use Committee, Joanne and Jinwei.
Jinwei, do you want to give the report or do you want me to give the report? We haven't had a report to the MAC since we had a meeting in October and one in November.
Yeah, can you give the report to the MAC please this time? I will do the next one.
Okay, so we met after the October meeting, we met on October 22nd. And that was for the property at 2758 Del Monte Avenue. And it was a request for variance and small lot design review to allow for an 8-foot to 8.5 foot secondary frontage and public road setback where 15 feet is the minimum and 10 feet minimum to the public road setback. And also for the construction of a 2nd-story addition to the house remodel. The existing residence is currently approaching onto the secondary frontage. So, I don't know if anybody's interested. I don't think Ronnie could pull up plans if anyone is interested. But the result was the application, both of us found that the application was missing a lot of information, and we wrote back to the planner that we found the application to be incomplete and unable to make any recommendations without providing a lot of further information. So that was that one, and asked the applicant to provide the information and come back. And then we also had a meeting on, let's see, in November, on November 12th. And actually the same application I just talked about came back, and they still had not provided the incomplete information, but just wanted to let us know that they're working on it and they will come back. And the other application for that November meeting was at 1518 Bartlett Avenue in San Pablo. And so the applicant requests approval of a variance to allow for a 14-foot aggregate side and yard setback where 15 is the minimum. And a 9-foot front yard and public road setback where 20-foot is the minimum. With a front yard setback and where 10 is the minimum for the public road setback. And they also were asking for a tree permit for work within the drip line and removal of 1 tree and small lot design review for the construction of a 2,238 square foot house. So we did review that. The architect was at the meeting and presented. And both Jinwei and I made some recommendations to the planner. The rear, I think it's a downhill site. And the rear of the building, on downhill sites, the rears of the building are often quite tall because of the slope.
Can I make a comment on that when you're done with your report?
Sure.
Yeah, thank you.
And we asked that they add some windows and elevation treatments to make it a little more interesting than a flat wall. On the rear elevation and around the corner on the northeast elevations, just to reduce the appearance of blank walls. And they were removing 2 trees because it's a small lot, and the existing trees were actually, they needed to move the house closer to the frontage road because of the slope, and they needed to remove trees in order to do that. And we asked that they plant 2 replacement trees, each larger than 25 gallons, to substitute for the 2 existing trees proposed for removal. Just to let you know that our recommendations are only recommendations to the planner. They're not final, they're only recommendations.
I understand.
For the planner to consider.
So my house is the one right below that. And I watched the video and I was disappointed that I wasn't able to be told about that meeting, but I don't know what happened, maybe I emailed it. I don't know, and maybe I just wasn't on the mailing list or something yet, but so anyway, I was able to watch the video. It was really interesting to hear the discussion, and I appreciate you guys, you and Jinwei, making some recommendations. I think that the hill is very steep, and there's a major slide risk as well. And I know you guys are engineers. I know the architect is not an engineer. But yeah, Liz and I both lived down below that house, and we found a report from the 90s or something, or 2000, where a major slide had occurred on that hill. So there's some other issues that go far beyond, I think, kind of the aesthetics of what you guys were responding to. But I do appreciate you made some comments, and it put a pause on the development, or like it went before planning. So I appreciate that you guys did that. So I want to thank you for that. Yeah, and I understand that you're making recommendations, and I understand that it's a nice process in the sense that you're helping people, you're facilitating them in such a way that they can get their plans approved, and we can get more housing, right? It seems like it's a permission structure that helps people get past restrictions. And so I'm not against any of that at all. I appreciate very much like the process of how it goes through this committee, and you're helping people kind of overcome barriers to getting their houses built. But I just wanted to mention that I saw the video and I watched it, and it was very informative. And I appreciate that you guys actually were thinking about the impact on the people and the houses around it. But yeah, there's a lot more significant, I think, risks or concerns with the project besides what was discussed at that meeting. I am curious if the view ordinance would have any bearing on it either, because you also mentioned it's like a 35-foot wall that would then be rising up over my home and blocking from gardens that Liz and I have been building and things like that. So I think there may be some issues with that as well. Besides, like you brought up just the aesthetics of having a blank wall and putting a window in it or something like that. I think it might be a view. It's the reverse of the view ordinance. I think they're above. So I don't know if that would be something that would would come into play or not.
Well, John Joy had mentioned that it could block light in the dark.
Yeah, so anyway.
But that problem, it's not in place, so it doesn't.
Yeah,
affect
that's
it.
true,
Hypothetically.
yeah.
So how were we supposed to find out about that meeting?
Yeah.
So.
Well, I wanted to mention that we have had meetings where, probably not since you've been here, Ronnie, but we have had meetings where neighbors have showed up and actually made some difference, and they have their input, they have time to speak too.
So we would have loved to have been there.
And we would love to have you, but I'm not sure why, I understand that we have agendas. And I understand that the agenda is sent out to anybody on the email list.
Which I'm on, but did not receive that email.
Yeah, we did, Liz and I did speak a few times in regards to that. More than likely, that was my fault, I'll take the hit on that. They are supposed to be sent out to everybody in the main list of the newsletter. So I'll just triple back and make sure that the subcommittees meetings are also sent out in that newsletter. So that specific meeting, more than likely just was not sent out to the main list.
So I did watch that video, also have lots of questions. And I do know that you had a public comment period, but there was no public there because the public wasn't informed. How can we get our comments on record and have our questions answered?
You mean on the proposal?
So you guys had that meeting and then there was a public comment moment.
You could have, if you had known about the meeting, you could have been here, or you could have sent a letter.
Okay, but we didn't know about the meeting.
Yeah,
because
so.
It didn't go out, so.
But you still have an opportunity to do public comment when it comes to the zoning administrator. Because I understand it's not been approved yet, and I think it's my understanding that the county would be required to notify everybody within 300 feet, and if you've spoken with the planner, you can reiterate and reiterate and reiterate that you want to be on the mailing list and make sure you are. But any variance, I mean, it's law that it has to go out to anybody within 300 feet. And they'll notify you when the meeting is, and you'll have an opportunity to either write a letter or show up at the meeting. And if there isn't a public hearing, you can request one.
Already requested one to the planner, but we'll make sure that we do that. Yeah, thank you.
The house seems very big. It seems like a large property, a large building.
Well, you know, it seems bigger too because it's on a slope. It's 2 stories in the front, but it's the back that seems big, and that's not usable space at the bottom, it's just a wall covering. It's the nature of hills.
You've gotta have a.
So even though it's 2 stories on the front, it looks like a bigger house on the back.
2,200 square.
Also, in regard to that slide issue, I know that there's a house on Capitol, which is right above it. And when they built their house, they were required to put in 30-foot piers down underneath that house. And this one, I read the planning report, and they are putting some foundation stuff in there, but.
Well, I don't think it's. Planning is separate from building, so it has to go through the planning process and then the building permit process.
Is next.
Yeah, and that's when they'll be looking at all of those building details. The planning process is more of the design process than it's actual, how it gets built.
Oh, okay.
Construction.
So issues about putting piers in would be then to the building.
Yeah, I believe that's outside the scope of what they were discussing already. It's gonna be in that stage next, is that accurate?
Yeah, that's what.
So are you guys just looking at it from an aesthetic standpoint? I mean,
I'm just bringing.
that was another question I had, so you guys
Absolutely.
were looking at the site, there's a sunken area in front of the property that is really obvious, it's in the satellite photos and nobody addressed that.
And Jinwei, if you wanna join in on this, we do look at the aesthetics, that's why we looked at doing something for that large blank wall. We do look at adjacencies, like we really meeting. If, you know, how close was it to buildings to either side of it, and apparently a lot to one side of it, there is no building, there's no house there yet. We look at how close it is to the street, I mean, we look at a lot of things, but it is mostly design review and how it fits in with the neighborhood.
Yes, we also look at the trees, when they want to remove a tree, we look at the impact of if they remove the tree, and normally we would kind of if it's a larger tree, healthy tree, sometimes we would recommend them to plant some new trees to replace the tree that is removed. Things like that, I think that all bring some character to the neighborhood, and the tree is also part of the review.
Yeah, this, one of your comments about replanting 2 large trees. I wonder at this moment, you know, when everyone's concerned about fire and foliage and controlling trees, basically, I'm wondering. I'm not wondering whether they should put in a couple more trees, because I don't know the site, but I'm wondering whether we have a process of thinking about when do you really want to add more foliage in a fire-prone neighborhood.
Well, they were working with an arborist, so I think an arborist would be aware of an appropriate size and type of tree that might be appropriate for the planting, and where it gets planting. I mean, there's a whole backyard there. There's just so many, it's really complex because there's, you know, retaining the soil and shading and climate change. I mean, it's just, it's not.
That's why I'm
very simple.
saying, do we have, is there a way for us to plan to think about kind of an approach for the neighborhood that would take these contradictory needs into?
Well, one of the things you could do is make a condition of approval that it has to be chosen by an arborist to meet all of these complex standards for the neighborhood that consider all of these. So if you go to the meeting, you could ask the planner at the meeting to make a condition of approval that it has to be selected by an arborist to be appropriate for the site, taking into consideration all these factors.
The planners normally require them to have a harvest to look at the trees, and also there are a lot of protected trees that they cannot remove, so the things like that. That I think is all part of the planning guideline. And so every time we look at it, they already kind of harvest and look at the existing trees, which ones are healthy, which ones should be removed, and they kind of already have a recommendation to us. But a lot of times the lots are small, so they have to remove trees before they can build anything. So a lot of times if they remove a lot more trees, that probably can unstable soil, that just like a lot of things that could happen, especially on the very steep slope.
Okay, is there anything else on this subcommittee? Okay. All right, thank you, Joanne. Next on the subcommittee, we've got Victoria will chair the fire subcommittee.
Well, I'm looking at first week in February, if that works for everybody. We would do the Firewise program that they're talking about and work with Michelle. And, you know, I've been concerned. I bought my house March of '87. I'm on Claremont around the corner from the Arlington Market. And I've been worried all these years about not having proper fire breaks and, you know, hiking around. I know what's out there. So I know how easily the fire could jump over. So that's my concern, is the fire breaks, having enough water, having the generator transfer pump to be able to send us the water if we need it. So anyway, I would like to get anybody who's interested in being on the subcommittee, just give me your name and number and your email and I can get it going. But we can look at maybe the first week in February of having our first meeting.
Yeah.
Is there a date and time you have in mind?
Oh, whatever anybody agrees upon, it's pretty open for me right now.
We need to have someone from
Michelle.
From our side also, like either.
Yeah, I was just about to say, because like we have 2 or 3 water towers on our neighborhood, but it would be nice to know if they've got backup generators.
Right.
And then also like
Well, I like the idea of finding out which
Yeah,
stations
we need to
have
find
the
out
transfer pumps,
How
right, have the
does the
generators,
water get pumped up to that tank you got?
right? Because
You guys know?
the one closest to me is
No,
on
I don't know.
Carquinez, and there's no,
Yeah.
we talked to PG&E a dozen times, and they said, nope, there's no backup generator there.
No.
If PG&E goes out, you can't get the water out of it, like,
Yeah, and then I think the fuel breaks, we have been getting skipped. I think Michelle is trying to work on trying to add fuel breaks, but I'm trying to get the fuel breaks extended all the way to El Sobrante. Cause like we neighbor El Sobrante, but then they have a fire, we have the Santa Ana ones coming in, it's
Yeah.
gonna come this way.
But what's happening with El Sobrante Mac? Like, should we be also meeting with El Sobrante Mac?
I can go over there one of the days and be like a member and like a city person and inquire.
Yeah.
Let's see.
Yeah,
But
I mean, we can also reach right out to them.
Yeah, Ronnie, how can we reach out to the El Sobrante MAC to figure out what they're doing on wildfire? Cause we share the same water towers over there.
You should have contact information on their specific website.
There's only one Mac that has contact information. I don't remember if it was El Sobrante.
Yeah,
But-
you should, cause I update them, that's my area of expertise, so if they don't, then you can reach out to me directly,
Okay.
and I can give you the shares.
so is Michelle the one I should be contacting then to get the HomeWise program, the FireWise program started?
Yes, and I think Michelle, you had your hand up also.
Yeah.
I did. Thank you very much. So as you're planning your fire subcommittee, I think it's important to understand that I am not the only resource within Confire. And what I'd like to do is coordinate with those other necessary resources to bring you the most information that you'd need. So first we have a FireWise regional coordinator. He is an inspector, and I will need to coordinate with his schedule to ensure that he is available and can provide a FireWise presentation. Now, if I'm understanding correctly, the fire subcommittee will occur outside of the MAC board?
Correct.
Okay,
It'll be
so.
a subcommittee, and we're looking at first week in February if he's available.
Okay, so as we're planning that, we need to think about some options for virtual attendance and also in person. So if you're choosing a site, if we could have a virtual option, and I can help set that up. But again, I would like to pull in the inspector, the FireWise regional coordinator, and making sure that you have the necessary resources, right? Because I want to give you the most information.
I don't mind doing Zoom if you want to coordinate that for us.
Sure, I'd be happy to.
Okay.
And all I need is a list of interested parties, and actually, so Confire uses what we call Google Meet, which is like Zoom's cousin. So we can coordinate that through Zoom. That would be fine. But I would like to still have an on-site meeting to deliver the needed materials, the education materials. And as you were having the tree conversation, I did put into the chat the link for our defensible space brochure. So understanding what zone 0, zone 1, zone 2, where to place those new trees, right? Understanding the ignition zones and how best to prepare your defensible space around your structure. So yeah, there's a lot of resources and there's a lot of printed material. So yeah, I'd love to be on site in an in-person meeting. That's always best because you have that one-on-one connection. But having a Zoom option for those who are unable to travel because of work, mobility challenges, or health concerns.
Michelle, Joanna just said we can have it here at this facility where we are now.
Oh, that's fabulous.
Okay.
Great.
We had to do our sign language across the room to make sure I could use it.
Okay, sure. So I go ahead and shoot me some dates by email, and I'll coordinate with the FireWise regional coordinator to get things all ready for everyone. It's a really quick turnaround, but I will do my best to meet the needs of the subcommittee.
Thank you, Michelle.
Thank you.
I have a question. So I don't have the time to be on the subcommittee, even though I'd love to be on the subcommittee. But I do.
Well, maybe you should just give me your name and email, and we can keep you in the loop.
Yeah, because I would like to bring some of our neighbors like myself, I live on Tulare right
Okay.
here. And the Arlington, we have kind of a group, to the fire, we'd like to participate in the Firewise community.
Right, me too.
Okay.
That's why I'm heading it.
My name is Gina, Gena McCarthy, McCarthy. And my email is GinaMcCarthy3 at
GinaMcCarthy3
@gmail.com.
Okay.
Thanks.
Thank
I'm
you
gonna
so
put this
much.
out to my.
Yeah, and I'll get yours
community
too.
list.
Okay. Sounds good.
I just wonder, are you talking about a meeting your committee's having? This is not like a public.
This is going to be like a subcommittee
Right, okay.
that we'll have here with the Firewise coordinator. Okay. So anybody afterwards who wants to give me your name and number, we'll put it on the list.
So I have a question for Ryan, since this is a subcommittee meeting, is there gonna be an agenda and will people be notified? So that if they wanna tune in and listen to it, they have that option.
If it's going to be a formal subcommittee, that's a part of this.
I don't know,
it would
that's what
have
I'm
to-
asking. It seems like a
Yeah, it would have to go through, much of the same, like, being appointed and all that good stuff, so.
How do most of the MACs do subcommittees for fire prevention?
That's an excellent question. I know for El Cervantes, they have a beautification subcommittee.
Okay.
But that's tied to their MAC specifically, so they have all the, it's like the land use subcommittee here, so. If it's gonna be more of like this informal setting, that may be the easier route.
I think we should just start with informal and get people rounded up and get organized, and then maybe we can change it later.
Yeah, and it sounds like it's gonna be tied into what John's putting together anyway.
Right, exactly. I mean, I'm not happy about the fire in LA, but it also did prompt them to start doing things, because we've been talking about this every meeting for 5 years. So.
I can provide everything on, I just recycle the emails on what I went through about.
Exactly.
Water tank.
Exactly.
And all of what they said.
Well, with PG&E going out in the backup generators, not pushing the water up, that's my concern.
Okay.
I mean, to be like 2 blocks from the water and not be able to get it.
Okay.
So,
Is
okay,
there
well,
anything else for this subcommittee?
Not for this one, but
You're
just wanted
next.
to remind.
You're next.
Okay.
Okay. Anything else from anyone on the fire subcommittee? Okay. Royer, you are next. The
So-
traffic and road safety subcommittee.
thank you.
If anyone wants to join, it'll always be virtual unless if we have like some thing that requires us to be in person, just because it's easier for everyone to kind of meet, and then I'll send an invite. It'll be informal, I'll just need y'all's contact info. It'll be the second Wednesday of every month at 6. So,
Okay, second.
and we'll be tackling things like crosswalks, sidewalks, cars and motor vehicles that are littering the roadways, and pretty much anything that's near a roadway, and traffic.
So you're gonna meet every second Wednesday monthly at 6 AM.
6 p.m.
Are you meeting here?
It's through Zoom or some virtual meeting.
Okay.
Zoom, Google Meet,
Okay.
or, but I'll send the invite.
Okay. Anybody have any questions on that?
What was the date once more? I couldn't hear.
Oh, second Wednesday, so the first one will be February, February 12th at 6 p.m. Okay. And it's virtual, so I'll need your email address.
Okay. All right. There is one more subcommittee. And we have to have someone who's going to chair it, because I'm not gonna do it. If we're going to have an East Richmond Heights Festival, we're going to need somebody to run that. I will do like I did this last year. I will help get all the permits and the insurance and everything that has to be done. It's a process that takes 6 to 8 weeks at least.
John, what was the date on that? It's in August, right?
We haven't got a date. We need to get a date, we need to find out from the county what other things are going on and what available dates there are. We've done it at the end of July and then also in August. It's gonna be somewhere around that time frame. If you all wanna have another East Richmond.
I think we should. What do you think, Pam? I'm very interested in being involved in it. Can you hear us?
Yes, yes. Sometimes the internet here or somewhere goes out and I don't hear everything, but yes, my only concern is my family vacation might be right around the end of July, early August. And I could bring a lot to, I could bring some energy to helping that happen. It's just what date are we gonna land on?
It would be a Saturday.
Okay. So
So
I would propose August, end of July. I'm out.
I couldn't hear everything.
I would propose August, a Saturday in August, because I'm out of state the end of July, but the 2nd, 9th, 16th, 23rd. Yeah, any of those are good.
We have to see what's happening in the county.
Yeah, so
I would do it before school starts.
And when does school start?
September.
No, it starts in August.
Is that August like?
So we're looking at any Saturday in August. If you could see what's available and then we can lock it in.
Okay.
Yeah.
Joanna's, let me just also mention, I did reach out today to two people. One to Leonard, who maintains that lot. And lives right next to it, provides the electricity for the band and all of that. I didn't hear back from him yet.
Okay.
I'll probably hear from him tomorrow. I want to make sure he's on board with that.
Right.
And I also left a message for Alan, who got all those people to show up with their booths and everything. And I left him a message and I haven't heard back from him, but I said, you did such a fantastic job. I want to know where you at. So I'm hoping the two of them are on board. And then again, we've got to reach out to Danya with the temple. I know he did bring in some porta potties last year, but
well, if you don't mind talking to those.
I will talk to them.
And we're flexible any Saturday in
If we're gonna go ahead
August.
with it, I will go through that. It's very extensive to get the permits, the insurance has to be paid. But I'm assuming, it'll be just like this last year, that the East Richmond Heights MAC, our funding will pay for those like it did this last time. I do get paid back, so that was good. Joanna.
First day of school, your list of school is August 19th.
August 19th. Okay. So maybe we prefer 2nd, 9th, or 16th.
Hang on, you guys. I have the West Contra Costa Unified School District starting school on the 11th.
Really? Monday the 11th? Well, then we could shoot for the 2nd or 9th.
So Pam or Victoria, who's gonna chair, are each one of you gonna chair it or?
Share what?
Chair that committee?
Oh, well, I'd want to co-chair. I mean, I think it would be the three of us. It'd be John and Pam and I. Because John knows the logistics of doing the permits and talking to the three people to see if they're
That's
available.
the hard part too.
I know.
But
And
I will do
then
that.
she and I could be more hands-on the day of, but I think it looks like 2nd or 9th would be best.
Yeah, well, I see Pam smiling.
I would not go on the 9th because everybody's gonna be doing their last minute school shopping.
2nd?
Okay, well, let's look at August 2nd.
See if the 2nd works.
And so Ronnie, we would need, if you can look at the calendar for the county. Are there other festivals, other big things that are happening?
Okay, sorry, I couldn't hear you for a minute.
Michelle also has a hand.
Oh, okay. Michelle, I see your hand up.
Hi, just to add to my 2 cents. So please feel free to include me on the updates for your festival. I'd love to provide a tabling event, a table and education for that event, because I think community outreach at any festival that's organized at this level can be a really valuable contact point.
That'd be nice. Thank you.
That would be great. Okay.
Okay.
All right, so we're gonna look to
We're hoping for the 2nd.
August 2nd.
Yeah.
Unless Ronnie comes back and says, oh, no, the Contra Costa County, Richmond, San Pablo, El Cerrito yacht festival is on, or whatever, okay. No, that's, so we wanna go with that day. Did you wanna look at the last Saturday in July, just?
Yeah. I return on the 28th from out of state, so, oh no, I won't be here. I come back on Monday the 28th.
All right, so let's see if we can make up the second one for everybody.
Okay.
Okay. All right, well, thank you for that. Is there any questions? No.
Public comment.
Oh, okay, we're getting there. So then we've got the next item, agenda item, speakers for upcoming MAC meetings. I've been disconnected for quite a while, so does anybody have anything they wanted to see about in?
So I think we're wanting to get PG&E to at least come bring, like, give us a report on the power lines. Because like the map I actually got from Michelle shows a lot of East Richmond Heights and Hasford Heights as like really red, but for some reason they don't show up really red for like wildfire danger in the like.
You're talking about what we call extreme and as opposed to just the fire danger map.
It'd be nice to have consistency. So we get some attention, right?
And so we might need to learn from PG&E why they don't consider us high risk, but then our fire department does, so like that's at least a starting point.
And I believe the high risk higher up here is Kensington Avenue and Richmond Avenue, the dead end streets.
Right.
Where
I live, check.
Yeah, I think, okay, so, who would be, Ronnie, who would be our contact for PG&E to come and speak?
I just looked through my email, I did reach out to the senior local government affairs rep. Well, back in October when this was initially brought back up, I haven't heard anything, so I can definitely follow back up to see if we can have him or someone.
Okay. And that's specifically talking about power lines and their, I call it the red line map, but it's, they have a posting map of areas that are considered high risk and extreme risk. And I'd like to have them come to and explain, because I'm under the impression that insurance companies have been adopting that map, and that's where they've been refusing to insure people.
Which of the
I
two
could be
maps have
wrong.
they been adapting?
The PG&E one.
I'm there somewhere they're getting it from a map, and that was my impression, but so if we could maybe reach out to get them to come to a meeting before we get into the summer. And answer those questions for us, that would be great.
I wonder if we do also need to deal with the insurance issues. I mean, I was dropped, I had CSE and now I've got AAA, and I feel like, I mean. I don't know
They
what's
dropped
gonna-
me and now I have farmers, which was twice as expensive.
So is that gonna be something of a concern that we need to?
Well, and Victoria, you might know about the insurance.
It's a mess right now. I have carriers, they can't write on anything right now. Their hands are tied, and mine just went up $800 for no reason with no claims. I'm now paying well over $3,000 a
Oh
year.
my God.
Yeah, I'm paying $335 a month now. It's crazy. I don't see it getting any better either. And I know, actually, I have clients that are thinking of moving out of the hills out into the Richmond Marina because of fire issues. So that's why it's very important about our subcommittee and getting fire breaks and all that.
Yeah, John, and one of either the October, the November meeting, Michelle Reinhardt mentioned this handout.
Yeah, I see Michelle, do you have your hand up again still?
I do. It's another 2 cents. I'm sorry.
No, I'm sorry, and it's kind of hard because on the screen, I only see half of the hand, so.
Sorry. So as you were talking about the maps, please keep in mind that the local responsibility area maps may indeed have an impact on the topic you are discussing. So as you talk about wildfire risk and PG&E, please keep in mind that we're awaiting CAL FIRE's release of those LRA maps, the local responsibility area maps, and that may have a significant impact. It's unknown right now. So I'll keep the MAC board informed and of course share that information with the fire subcommittee.
All right.
Anyway, this is what Michelle mentioned earlier about steps you can do. It says every action under Safer from Wildfires is the name of the program, will qualify you for an insurance discount. There's a QR code where it's a list of things to do your house to get an insurance discount. And I would like to write a follow-up article on this. If anybody actually does this program, I want to see if it actually works and if you actually did get a discount up there. Good.
Yeah.
All right, so the next item, we're almost done, folks. The regional historical presentation, I know I haven't heard from anybody that's willing to do anything. Fran, I know you're looking kind of.
You always have interesting.
Interested over there, you do the best presentations.
It'd be good to have some in the future.
Okay.
If you want to focus on past fire.
You know, sometimes we have a few history talk, but I really don't want to someday do a talk about how the fire destroyed the neighborhood.
No.
Of course.
If we fix everything, that won't make the news, but we'll be much happier.
Okay.
But, I mean, how many of us, some of you have been around a while, I can remember the days of seeing the open house fire from Alton. And
Oh, yeah.
seeing, smelling the smoke from Santa Rosa that night.
Well, that day was a very eerie day because it was very windy, but it was a hot wind.
Yeah.
And I even told my husband, this is strange. And the next thing you know, the fire starts. I had a lot of clients lose their homes in the Oakland fire.
And I do a lot of Berkeley history research in 1923. That's where you start seeing the photos of the chimneys and the lots. And it's easy for us to say, it's just not gonna happen. I'm gonna wish it won't, but caption.
No, we have to be ready. We have to be
part of
ready.
that. So no, not this month, but.
And it is open to anyone who would like to come with a historical.
Tell a story
East
about
Richmond
someone
Heights
or something.
And Hasbrook Heights.
I'd like to bring some of the artists
I'd like
and
to know where
businesses.
Hasbrook Heights go, where did the name come from?
I don't know.
You have any idea, who's Mr. Hass?
Yeah, we need from your side.
Good topic.
I don't know.
You know, East Richmond Heights is actually Tewksbury
Right.
originally.
That's what it says on
And
the
that's
maps.
named after.
Yeah, even on the public records, it says.
I don't know
Tewksbury.
about Hasbrook, but possible.
I don't know.
Okay.
I know that there's a story, maybe you know, down on, what street is that, where there's a bridge between two areas that someone was living. There's still the foundation of the house.
Oh, okay.
And people that live in the area know about the history of this guy that was living there.
And
and-
on Marin.
No, it's not a Marin at all. No, it's on, like if you're
But
going
the school, right?
right next to the school, like right over there.
Near Riverside.
Near
I had a
Riverside.
lady who lived right there, she had a big garden.
Yeah, and like now there's this whole like little area set up with little figurines and like lights set up. It's pretty interesting but yeah, there's a whole story of some guy that lived there for some time. I can talk to some neighbors.
Lots of history.
Yeah, there was a Hasbrook. Yeah, there's some, I don't know how much we wanna know, but.
But having some businesses and artists.
Yeah.
Come and give a presentation of who they are, what they're about. I volunteer to look into that.
And then you can invite them to our art.
Yes.
Yes.
Or vice versa, I can find out the ones that were there last time and have them come and talk.
Yeah, I'm part of the mural group from the Arlington Market, so I could have one of the women who.
I think that's what I'm seeing.
Yeah. Oh, okay.
Yes, okay.
Yeah.
We also have a lot of artists that live in Hasbrook Heights. Marilyn right here is one of them, and then the neighbor across the street from her as well. They do glass work.
Oh, Marilyn, I'd love you to show your work. Your work is spectacular. It would be amazing.
What kind of glass work is it, stained glass?
She doesn't.
No, that's my neighbor across the street does glass blowing.
Oh, nice.
Okay, let's go on and finish up here. Our last agenda item is public comment on any item under the jurisdiction of the committee. And not on the agenda that we spoke about so far. So I know Joanna's got something here.
2 items. In a previous meeting, Bara suggested that we make our meetings sexier, so in that effort, I brought some homemade persimmon cookies.
That's very sensitive.
If anybody wants to bring refreshments to make the meetings more welcoming, it's welcome to do that. I'd also like to encourage, if you haven't received the neighborhood newsletter, that you take one. And if you'd like to distribute it to your neighbors, it's a good way to meet your neighbors, a good excuse to check in on them every 8 weeks. And just say, here it is. We have 8 neighbors who volunteer and hand it out in person. If you want to just double check, make sure you get it. You can also sign up on this red clipboard here to get it electronically. We send to you every 8 weeks. And now that we know that our next meeting, well, we're only doing the newsletter every other month. But we'll, so it'll come out, March 13th, all right? Thanks.
Thank you. Okay. Does anybody else have anything? Laura?
I just want to make an announcement of this. I'm going to not wear my MAC hat for a moment. I am putting together a fundraiser to sponsor, to raise money for Stitch in Time Animal Rescue. So it's gonna be February 23rd at my house. We have an auction. If anyone wants to check out the auction, we've got SF MoMA, Young, Oakland Zoo, Oakland Museum. It's gonna be a beautiful event. We're gonna have entertainers. Hen House from Petaluma is one of the sponsors, and it's a beer place. So if you go on, if you want information, you can let me know, and animaladvocates.info will have under events. So we're looking to raise money. We need to save the animals of this county, and Stitch in Time is doing an amazing job. So we want to be able to help them continue their great work.
So maybe you can bring flyers to our next meeting.
I can do that. Yeah.
Okay. Anybody else have anything? Okay. With that, then we'll adjourn. Our next meeting, it will be on February 19th. Same time, same place, same channel.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
February 19th, that's a school break. It's a holiday, right?